You're listening to Why We Do What We Do.
Welcome to Why We Do What We Do. I am your 5-year-old host, Abraham.
And I am your starting kindergarten host, Shane.
We're a psychology podcast, and we like to talk about all of the things that we do as humans that are interesting to us.
We've been doing that for some time now. As a matter of fact, we've been doing that for at least 5 years.
Yep, we have a special episode today, in fact. We're going to acknowledge our 5 years, do some fun stuff around that, and then just talk through some randomness about the show, I think.
This episode is going to be, it's designed to be a celebration. So it's the end of the year.
Yes.
It's going to be the last episode that comes out for 2022. So we're going to roll in some 2022 wrap-up stuff. But I do think it's kind of a celebration and an acknowledgement of all the work that the team here has done. And really just kind of celebrating that because, a lot of podcasts don't do this as consistently as we have.
Yeah.
I think that there's been very rarely have we missed a deadline. And we have really continued to put out content for 5 years straight.
Yep, exactly. Well, if you like what you hear today and would like to support us, you can join us on Patreon. You can subscribe, leave a rating and review, tell somebody about us, bake cookies shaped like us, and sell them at a bake sale, all the stuff. And I'll talk more about that at the end when we're finished recording. So this episode is coming out on December 28th. So that's why we're doing this wrap up, is we were at the end of the year. And so let's talk about some things happening on December 28th. All right, so today we have just a few holidays to celebrate, not as many as we often see, but one of them is that it is National Card Playing Day, which I'm, of course, more than thrilled about.
Yeah, I like that one. Big Go Fish fan here. Today is also National Call a Friend Day, so for those of you who just prefer to text all the time, it's probably time to pick up the phone and actually speak to a human.
Just, in honor of the celebration.
Yeah.
Nothing else. And finally, it is National Chocolate Candy Day, which, yes, good. On board.
Big day. I wish every day was National Chocolate Candy Day.
Right. They just want to make it special, so it's only once a year.
I know, but I eat chocolate candy like every day, which is, I think, a real problem. It's probably why I'm like pre-diabetic. Now that I think about it.
All right, well, let's get to talking about this episode and the celebration of our anniversary and all that sort of stuff.
The first kind of thing that we want to talk about is in the 5 years that Why We Do What We Do has been around, we have had a lot of people that were involved. And when we started putting together the 5-year episode, we got some ideas from the folks that were helping us kind of write everything and that have been involved for the last few years. And so we got some kind of tidbits and some interesting facts provided by Selena, who was working with us on the show for a little bit, and Alan, who has stepped away to be a parent for a while. And they're still involved in some ways and here and there, but we wanted to kind of share some insights that they had from the last 5 years.
Yeah, so this is sort of a then and now of what was happening 5 years ago versus what's happening now. I'll provide Selena's. Selena had said we had unemployment around 4.1%, and inflation was averaging about 2.13%. That was 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And now we have the annual inflation rate for the United States it was at 8.5% for the 12 months that ended in March 2022.
Yeah, that's a little bit hectic. Now, Alan shares that in 2017, because remember, 5 years ago was 2017, Tom Holland stepped into the shoes of Peter Parker in arguably the best Spider-Man performance yet. I would agree with that. I think that he is the all-encompassing Spider-Man Peter Parker, and everybody gets all upset about that. But since then, as of 2022, the Marvel Cinematic Universe now has a multiverse that allows for the return of any character from any movie of any industry from any decade. And we have already seen that with No Way Home.
True. With
Spider-Man showing up, and also Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness with Professor X coming back. So I think it's super, super cool.
Yep. Also, 5 years ago, Tesla changed their name from Tesla Motors to just Tesla Incorporated. The U.S. withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement. North Korea tested their longest range missile ever developed at that point. So that was 5 years ago. And then this year, Elon Musk bought Twitter so he can help undermine democracy by creating a worldwide disinformation and hate speech platform. Uh-huh. Vladimir Putin sent Russian troops to go on a genocidal rampage of war crimes against Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And the U.S. Supreme Court dismantled women's rights. And Netflix canceled Space Force.
A lot of bad things.
Yeah.
Like, arguably, things have not gotten better since then. The last little bit we'll share here. In 2017, much of the slang that was used by what we call young folks included terms like savage and low-key and extra. But today, in 2022, it's just as horrible. So slang continues to devolve with terms like cotton 4K, bussin', and chuggy, and vibe check, which even since then has evolved at the time that we wrote this, from the time that we wrote this till now. So, slang is, I think about this a lot. Slang is a funny thing, and thinking about slang that we used when we were kids, like we would call things rad and bad.
Right.
Remember everything was bad, but it was good, right? Oh, that's so bad.
Right.
I don't know. It's always fun. Having a 17-year-old in the house that's using the slang all the time is really upsetting.
Okay, so some fun things. Obviously, there's a lot more we could say about what happened in 2017 and 2022 and all that, but I think that just gives some fun sort of overview of highlights, I guess you could call them, maybe.
Yeah.
Things.
I think it's always interesting to kind of like look like, okay, like what does the world look like today? Like kind of like a time capsule, which,
right.
by the way,
yeah.
I think in like 2 years, Nickelodeon, we're supposed to be able to open the Nickelodeon time capsule.
Ooh.
So got to live for that, hopefully.
Do you know when they buried it?
I think it was like 30 years.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Like it's a 30-year time capsule, yeah.
Some 90s nostalgia in there.
Yeah, there's going to be like a Game Boy in there.
Yeah.
Slime, the recipe for slime, which is vanilla pudding and something else, green food coloring.
Word. That is really fun.
I thought so.
All right. I think one of the things I'd be remiss if I did not talk about for a little bit is part of how the show is supported. Now, obviously, we have the wonderful people over on Patreon who have supported us, and then advertisements help pay the bills as well, as they say. But we have twice now been lucky enough to achieve a grant from the Disseminating Behavior Analysis Special Interest Group. And so I definitely want to extend my gratitude to their support and what we're trying to do. And just to describe them a little bit, if you're not familiar with this DBA SIG, is how it's often called. Their mission is, quote, to disseminate the science of human behavior to the public at large through the use of easy to understand explanations. Our goal is to promote behavior analysis in a positive and accurate light to help society realize the potential of our science, end quote. And so if that's something that you're into, you might go check it out.
We have always kind of shared that same vision and that same goal. So I think that that's why, our partnership and like our support from the DBA, it aligns really well with the kind of the nature of the podcast. So if you are interested, they do student and professional subscriptions. Like you can get continuing education. They do host continuing education events. They do annual meetings. And like we mentioned before, they offer grants for dissemination. They're typically a year that they offer, or they offer you like some money to support for that year. And that's kind of what they do for the field, is they do a lot of kind of outreach for groups that are sharing the science.
Yeah. So just as you said, very, very grateful for how they've supported us. So just want to send people that direction if that sounds like that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So some other fun things, a lot of people who follow the news and who use Spotify will know that Spotify does their Wrapped info for people, their listeners, at the end of the year, and they also do it for, at least as far as I know, for podcasts, because we've got one. So we're going to just talk through a few fun pieces of information that we got from our Spotify Wrapped stats. And one of them that was kind of cool is that Why We Do What We Do is in the top 10% most followed podcasts on Spotify.
Yeah, I thought that was really rad. And so I think that just tells us, a little bit. That's it. Basically just want to say we're super thankful for everybody that does follow us. I mean, that does make a big difference for the show. Like that does help with getting us out into the world and getting people to hear the show. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So another thing is that we have gotten some really good reviews, and our average score for reviews and just kind of like basic, approval is 4.9 out of 5. So we're apparently we're doing something right, except for in the eyes of Jordan Peterson, which we will never forget. So that's one thing that we do have to share. In the last 5 years, we have made at least one enemy, and that was Jordan Peterson. Yeah. But I think that that's pretty cool that everybody seems to like what we're doing, at least.
Yeah, for sure. We also get some information about some of the gains that we've made. We have had a 55% increase in listeners, a 46% increase in followers. Interestingly, we released a 9% more hours of content this year than last year. Then we had a 5% increase in streams overall. So yeah, kind of cool. Fun stuff there.
Yeah, I think it was funny when we were talking about these stats before and we talked about that increase in hours. I think it just came from the fact that you and I just talk a lot.
Yeah.
Like we can't we always joke where we'll say, okay, we got this episode. It looks like a short episode and it will always end up being longer because we always go off on these tirades or, these kind of tangents.
Yeah.
So we weren't sure if the increase in hours was a good thing, but we hope that you appreciate it.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully it's been okay for everybody.
So another really cool stat was that we found that we were in the top 10 podcasts for at least 741 people. We were in the top 5 podcasts for 435 people. And we were the number 1 podcast for at least 77 folks. So I thought that was really cool. I don't think that any of us expected to be the top 1 of anything. So it's very nice to kind of have that validation and know that people really do enjoy us.
Yeah. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Final thing I'll say is that we were in 64 countries, which is really cool. Thank you all to all those out there who are listening, outside of our. I mean, obviously, we are very happy with all the people who listen here, but just as cool that we had such a good reach.
Yeah,
and then with that 9% increase, apparently we recorded 2.4 thousand minutes of content this year.
We've been having fun with it, but I do think, it's important that that's just what we've recorded. That doesn't even talk about all the time that gets put into the back end of it. The time that people spend writing notes, the time that we have just in editing, all the folks that have been instrumental in making this happen.
Exactly. There's it's a lot of work, a lot of passion, a lot of love goes into it.
So much love. So maybe before we take some time to celebrate those folks, maybe we could take a quick ad break so we can keep making money for the podcast.
Let's do it. Okay. We have had a small cadre of people who have really helped us over the years. I would like to acknowledge those past and present who have contributed to this show being what it is and who it is. So first, I'd like to acknowledge that this really just started with me and Ryan with some help behind the scenes from his cousin Tyler. And so this was just us. It was just a small little crew at first.
I remember when you guys came out, I remember giving it a listen and then finding out later that you guys were wasn't Ryan using a Guitar Hero mic to record?
Yeah. Yep.
Just figuring this stuff out as we go.
Yeah.
Later, we were really thankful to have Miranda Drake join us. She was really cool. So you'll sometimes hear her voice, or you used to hear her voice at the end of the shows where she would kind of say thank yous and stuff like that. I mean, she did some really cool work with the show for a while.
Yeah, that's still Miranda's voice you hear at the end. We just have truncated the length of the credits there.
Yep.
But yeah. And then, of course, Shane, you started with us initially sort of part-time and then eventually took over full-time.
Yep.
And so then, of course, it's just been the two of us since then.
Yeah, it's been fun.
At least for the recording group part.
Yeah, so we're the faces of the podcast, so for this audio
and the
medium and the sounds. But we have had a lot of people that have been on the back end that have helped us. We've had Britt Bowerly, Britt DeSanti, Amber Grote, Kyle Sturry, Alan Kinsella, Selena de Villa Schilling, Justin Greenhouse, Jess DeMarco, Patrick O'Leary have all been working with us and continue to work with us in some capacity in some way, in different ways, and they've been working with us for some time. So when we said that it kind of takes a team to make this happen, that's what we're saying is there are folks that are kind of behind the scenes that are really the reason why this podcast continues to go the way it does.
Yes. And on a similar note, we've had Patreon supporters who are no longer Patreon supporters. And so people, they come and go and all of that. And regardless of whether or not, they were able to stay with us, we really appreciate all the contributions that they made. For those who are our current Patreon supporters, who they continue to make those contributions, extremely generous. And we're just very thankful about it. And so I wanted to acknowledge those who were with us in the past, which is Kathleen, the Green Queen, Selena, Eric, Audrey, Ariel, Freddie, Simon, Carolina, Lisa, Paolo, Beth, and Megan. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I usually thank our current Patreon members at the end, but I'll just throw it in now since we're talking about them.
Yeah.
And that includes Amanda, Brad, the Daily BA, Joshua, Justin, Justine, Kelly, Kim, Costia, Layla, Megan, Mike M, Mike T, Shauna, and Stephanie. So thank you all so much for all of the contributions that you have very generously shared with us.
Seriously, it's absolutely an honor that you're willing to spend your time and your precious audio, your ear space real estate with us, and also money, your hard-earned money. I mean, it really means the world.
Yes, absolutely.
So the year's 2022. And we are going to do a quick recap of what we did this year. This year has been pretty busy. We've done a lot of things. So we're going to talk about kind of what we did with the show, what we talked about, and some other things that have happened. So the big thing that we did this year was we hit our 5-year mark, and that's an accomplishment. That doesn't happen with very many podcasts, and we're pretty proud of the work that we've done, and the fact that we have continued to get better at what we do, I think.
Yeah. And so this year, some of the things that we've talked about includes calendars, genital reveal parties, search and rescue, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that was fun. We also talked about motivational interviewing. We talked about factitious disorder. We did that twice.
That's right.
We talked about William James, and we talked about my favorite topic, conspiracy theories.
Indeed. We've talked about depression in a couple different ways, idioms, and coffee.
Love that one. We've also talked about crunchy food, personality, and life after death and atheism together. So, that was a fun one.
Had some interesting discussions around psychoanalysis, astrology, and a 2-part series on freedom.
Yeah, all those things go together. We also talked about plagiarism, abortion, and the 40-hour work week, which, a lot of cool facts there.
I'd almost forgot that we talked about sarcasm. Man, who can forget that?
Yeah, exactly.
Plus, we talked about the Chernobyl disaster and political prisoners.
And we also talked about pets, skepticism and denialism, shrugging, and EMDR. So a lot of real cool stuff there.
And then finally, and recently, we talked about the history of the political parties in the United States, and then the use of ketamine for treatment in mental health disorders.
A large breadth of stuff that we've talked about. So we talked about some really cool things. And we also this year continued our trend with talking about Halloween topics. And so this year we covered Madame Marie Laveau. We talked about UAPs. We talked about serial killers, and we talked about cryptids. A lot of really fun things there, I think. Like I love the Halloween series that we do.
Absolutely. They're some of my favorites. I have a lot of fun with them, so I hope our listeners do as well.
Yeah.
Also, we were lucky enough to be joined by some very special guests who we interviewed on the show. We had Dr. Andrew Bulla and Oscar Tercios joined us to talk about their experience in their work in training wolves.
Yeah. We interviewed Dr. Ashley Greenwald, and she described how doulas work.
Also, we talked with Sandra Bishop about trauma-informed behavior management.
And we also had some guests on our ketamine episode to kind of share their experiences. I got to spend some time with Dr. Andrew Bulla at a conference in Michigan, and he is a fantastic presenter. If you ever get to see him talk, he is wonderful. And he also presents barefoot.
Yes.
Which I had never seen. And I also got to meet Dr. Sandra Bishop at FABA, and she is a delight in person. So please spend some time with her, too, if you get to say hi to her, because she's really, really great.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Another thing we did this year is we introduced a new episode format we wanted to try out, and that was our nostalgia episodes. And in these, what we're doing is we are replaying a previous episode from about 5 years ago, and then we will supplement with any previous or any newly released information at the end. So we'll kind of do like an update. And then we've started supplementing our regular releases with a few of these nostalgia episodes coming out periodically.
I thought that was a really cool idea. And I'm really glad that we're starting to do that because, science never has a finish line. So an episode that came out 5 years ago is not going to be the definitive episode on that topic.
Right.
So 2022 was absolutely busy for the world as well. There was a lot of stuff going on. One of the interesting things that have happened is Brittany Griner was imprisoned in Russia for having a small amount of cannabis and finally returned home at the end of the year, while other political prisoners were not. And people are not thrilled with that. But, if we can get people home, I think that's good. Yeah,
that's true. Another thing that happened this year was monkeypox.
Because we needed another thing.
Yep. So that was part of 2022.
Also, Russia invaded Ukraine, which was an unwelcome conflict that is still ongoing and the largest armed conflict since World War II. So we're having some real issues over there. Hope everybody's trying to stay safe.
Yep. Another thing that happened is COVID restrictions largely lifted around the world in most places. But at the time of this recording, it seems like the most oppressive of the COVID restrictions has been lifted as well, or at least modified to be less strict.
Yes, and now people are trying to sue Fauci, so that's a fun thing.
Sure.
Yes, whatever. There's also a historic upset in the U.S. elections. The far-right conspiracy theory Republicans were put to the test where they lost nearly every race, except for Florida.
That's right.
Ugh.
Something people will probably have heard of is that inflation has surged across the globe in the wake of the pandemic. So pretty much all over the world, prices have been going up for everything.
Yes. Despite that, we actually had the first successful heart transplant from a pig to a human. So now we're on our way to Chimera.
Yeah, technically this is true. And then finally, there's been several volcanic eruptions this year, although many of them were also ongoing from previous years. But notably, there was the Hunga Ha'api, just called Tonga usually, underwater volcano in the South Pacific Ocean, which sent giant tsunamis to Tonga, Fiji, American Samoa, and many other places along the Pacific Rim. And the other volcano, of course, is the Mauna Loa volcano that's currently erupting at the time of this recording in Hawaii.
Yeah, because that's another thing that we need. So besides like a disease ravaging the planet, we need more volcanoes going off.
Yep.
Whew.
Well, let's talk about some science news. But before we do that, we're going to bring you some ads now with 100% more ads. Okay, so we're sort of sharing. I mean, this is most of the stuff that we said are probably things that people were generally aware of, but there was also some really cool science news this year. So here's some stuff to just sort of talk about and sort of what happened in science.
Yeah, there was a 30,000-year-old baby woolly mammoth body that was discovered preserved in Canada. So like they found it intact, which I think is really, really neat.
Yeah, one of the best they've recovered as far as I've heard.
Yeah.
NASA also flew a space shuttle straight into an oncoming asteroid to change its course very successfully, apparently.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the crash and burn test, and it worked.
Yeah. Did you see the video footage from that?
I did. It was very stressful.
Yeah. It's very cool though. Like it was really cool. It was really cool to see it hit and then see the control room like erupt in applause to support that. Like I thought that was really cool. Yeah,
it was neat. It was just like, no, I guess not very stressful. It's just like watching the asteroid get closer and closer and closer, and it's just sort of like,
yeah, you go, yeah. So, lab-grown brain cells learned to play ping pong, or pong, I should say, specifically. Except the story seems to be wildly misleading. What actually happened was that they stimulated the brain cells to respond to a simulated back-and-forth movement, and then to respond to predictable changes in line with those simulations. So essentially, they showed that the brain cells could learn to respond to patterns, which is cool, but they weren't playing pong. So, just to be clear about that, the brain cells weren't playing pong, but they did learn.
Yeah, it was a simulation, and that's cool. Like that is an interesting breakthrough. But anyway, something that was kind of interesting because I thought this was done was the Human Genome Project was actually finished, and they had sequenced the human genome a while ago. And apparently, what happened is they were allowing a certain amount of we don't know what this is in that genome sequencing original to still be able to say that it was complete. Well, that part that the we don't know what this is part has apparently now been complete as of this year. So it's kind of cool.
That's really neat. There were helicopters on Mars. They flew drones around Mars to take pictures. And so that was really cool to see some of that. I'm fascinated with like the Mars projects. Like I think that's like one of the coolest things. I think it's really impressive.
Yeah, that's a very cool accomplishment. First time we've ever done anything quite like that. Yeah, so for the first time in our lifetime, or first time ever actually, there was a aircraft flying around Mars.
Like everybody is so upset about so many things. I want you to take a second to think about this. Like if I was a kid and somebody said that one day we would be flying helicopters on Mars, I'd be like, yeah, I'm in. Let's go. This is the coolest thing ever. It's totally science fiction in the 90s, but it's totally science fact in the 2020s. So like I think that that's a really cool thing, and I can't believe that more people are not talking about it.
Indeed. Yeah, very amazing. Very cool stuff. We also, the James Webb Space Telescope launched and was unfurled and is out doing science in the solar system. So that was another cool accomplishment.
Incredible photos from that thing.
Yeah, they've been just breathtaking so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And then marine biologists have reported 2 octopus communities. They had been discovered for a while, but they've been studying them more often. And they are Octopolis and Octalantis. And they have discovered that octopi have built communities and actually built like shelters and like dens, and will kick out members of the community if they're not adhering to like kind of guidelines within the community. It's kind of a wild thing. And they use like shells and debris from food they've eaten and scrap metal that they find to build these underwater cities. So if you needed some more, fear fodder for 2022, we're on the brink of an AI octopus human war on the planet, and nobody's prepared for the octopi.
Well, I do kind of love this though, and I like the names that they've chosen for the communities as well. They're really good. Octopolis.
I can't wait for like South Octhampton or something like that to show up.
I would like to meet the octopus ambassador when they are ready to start communications and work on trade.
I will shake whichever hand they prefer of their 8.
Yeah. All right. Well, while we get to celebrate some of the cool accomplishments and the things, historical, not necessarily all accomplishments, but the historical benchmarks that we faced this year, we also have some sad things to acknowledge, which are those people who have been contributions to science or to behavior analysis specifically. And so we're recognizing those people who passed this year and the contributions that they have been.
Absolutely. So we first want to recognize Beth Sulzer Azaroff, who was a behavior analyst, and she was the first female president of the Association for Applied Behavior Analysis International from 1981 to 1982, and she was a pioneer in organizational behavior management. You may be familiar with her work because she did write one of the more popular texts in our field, and we do use that consistently in a lot of behavior analysis programs.
Yep. Celebrating these people. Tamika Meadows was another person that passed this year. She was the person behind the I Love ABA blog. Mm-hmm. Apparently also wrote several books and manuals. And sadly, she was only 42. She passed. So
yeah,
way too young.
Way too young. There's also Samuel Katz, who was the man who developed the measles vaccine. He was 95, so lived a decently long life.
Yeah. Beryl Benacerraf, I hope I'm saying that kind of correct, was an obstetric scientist who pioneered the use of ultrasound to diagnose fetal health conditions. Mm-hmm. And so she was 73.
Yep. And then there was the pediatric oncologist, Audrey Evans, who co-founded the first Ronald McDonald House, and she was 97. I have a friend who spent some time staying in a Ronald McDonald House when her son was in the NICU units, and it's an incredible program. I think that people don't really acknowledge how powerful something like that can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we thought we'd share some of the other things that we enjoyed this year, some of the entertainment. This is not going to be a complete list. That would be crazy long. But some highlights, some standout movies, TV shows, books, podcasts, or plays that we may have seen or experienced in some way. So I thought we'd just sort of run down a few of those. Shane, what are some, maybe we'd start with movies, some key movies that stand out for you this year?
Oh, man. I am just such a sucker for the Marvel universe, and I haven't watched a lot of movies this year, but Wakanda Forever and Doctor Strange and Love and Thunder, like all of those were just a lot of fun. Like, I think that's, I used to be more of like a movie guy. I used to spend more time watching them, but I have this year I've been more of a book and music guy.
Okay.
Even though that's always kind of been the flavor, but like those are the movies that kind of stood out to me that I was like, yeah, those are fun. I will say though, the one that kind of that's out away from that is Prey.
Yeah.
Which is the Predator movie, which was just fantastic. Like it was done so well. And now I just want more Predator movies that are just like put a Predator in some time period with the warriors of that time and let them fight. Like I want to see Predators in feudal Japan. I want to see Predators dropped into no man's land during World War II. Like I want to watch that. Like I'm down for that.
That would be fun. I agree.
What about you?
I agree with a lot of that, with particularly with the obviously the Marvel movies we talk a lot about. But I also got to see this year The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which was way more fun than I thought it could be.
That was a blast. I don't know how I missed that. I've watched that twice this year, and it was really, really fun.
Nice. Yeah. Very, very silly, but just very funny movie. Bullet Train came out. I thought that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that one. That one's actually now available on streaming, I think, in some places.
Yeah. Neil Brennan's Boxes was good.
Okay.
Was it called Boxes?
I'm not sure.
His newest
I don't
stand-up
recognize
special was really, really good.
Okay. So recently, this has sort of got some recency bias here, but just watched Enola Holmes 2. So if you saw the Netflix movie Enola Holmes, and this is Enola Holmes 2. And that was pretty good.
Yeah, I hadn't seen the first one, but I heard they were really good.
Yeah.
I like Millie Bobby Brown.
Yeah, same. Also got to watch quite a few fun TV shows. I'll shout out a couple that I enjoyed this year in particular. The TV show I've been really into that's just been taking up all my time is Ghosts.
Oh, yeah.
And so that one really stood out to me as being a lot of fun. Also, The Umbrella Academy, The Boys, sort of got a superhero theme going on right now.
Yeah.
We're all really good. And Andor and
yes,
Miracle Workers. Yeah, I think those are the ones I'll throw out as being something that I really enjoyed.
I was going to say Andor was probably my favorite of the year because I mean I'm of the mindset that you can't really go wrong with more Star Wars. Everybody gets like, people get really hung up on that, but I'm like, I'll watch all the Star Wars stories that don't have to do with the Skywalkers because I think that that's like kind of cool and nice and interesting into that world.
Yeah.
But She-Hulk is on my list too. Like that was a lot of fun.
Yes, that's a good point.
Even though people didn't like that, Miss Marvel was a lot of fun. Like again, it's more so, the Marvel stuff right now that I've been really, really enjoying.
Yeah, that's fair. Cool. All right. I'll go first for books because I think my list will be pretty short relative to yours. I reread Dune, Messiah, and Children of Dune this year.
Yes.
Also finished reading How to Be an Anti-Racist.
Great.
Read some fantasy books, including one of the it wasn't Way of Kings, one of the Brandon Sanderson fantasy books, forgetting which one. And then also the nonfiction, the book Fuzz by Mary Roach, and then a few others as well.
I was just going through my book list this year and realized I read 93 books. I would say that of my list, my list was so long on my app that it literally crashed my app.
Huh?
I would say, I'm almost done with Children of Dune, and I love that series. My favorite is the one character, like the main character of Children of Dune, I think is really cool. And I love kind of I'm almost done with it. So it's been really cool. I won't do any spoilers for that. I think, for me, it was really great. That was a really great read. Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy was pretty incredible, pretty scary. So scary. Storyteller by Dave Grohl was really, really great. I was really surprised by that one. I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara was really good. If you like true crime, that was a really cool one, I think.
Cool.
And was published posthumously because she had passed away before it was finished and they ended up catching the Golden State Killer. Salem's Lot, Vibrate Higher by Talib Kweli, Bad Advice by Paul Offit was one that I finished this year that I loved.
Yeah.
Thought that was really cool. Let's see, what else? Radical Candor was really good by Kim Scott. I really enjoyed that read, especially if you're working in like an administrative role. The other one that I would mention too is The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker, which is what Hellraiser's based on.
Yeah.
And it is just as sexy scary as that movie is. It's like just real gross and weird and awesome.
Man, fun.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. All right. Podcasts. For me, the one that stands out, and again, recency bias, but there was a podcast that I have been sort of zealously sharing all over the place because of how good it was. And it's called Sold a Story. It's a podcast about this, evaluating a lot of reading disfluency and illiteracy in the United States and one of the potential sources for that. It's a 6-part series, but that one was really good and stood out to me. And of course, I would want to always mention that our good friends who are doing great things over their podcasts, like the Behavior Observations podcast, ABA Inside Track, Drinking from the Toilet.
Mm-hmm. Behavior Bitches.
Yeah, Behavior Bitches. Yeah,
there's some cool ones out there. I mean, there's some people doing some really cool stuff. So like, as far as podcasts go for me, like the ones that I really dug were more music ones. So like Song Exploder is a cool one. I really enjoyed No Dogs in Space. Mm-hmm. That's a fun one. They kind of do like some deep dives on like specific artists and stuff. But I like Last Podcast on the Left. Time Suck did a really good one on World War II, like a 2-part series on World War II that was really cool. Doughboys is a lot of fun. That one's just like literally 2 guys just reviewing fast food chains, and that's just very silly fun. I was bummed about losing Reply All this year, but that happens sometimes. So
got it. My 2 favorites generally are the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast and the Stuff You Should Know podcast are my ones I look forward to the most. Yeah.
Yeah, those are good. Yeah, those are fun.
All right. I didn't actually see any plays this year. Did you go to any plays?
No, I did not. But I did see on Disney Plus, they did a 30-year anniversary for Beauty and the Beast, and it's done really, really well. And Josh Groban is Beast.
Oh, great.
And Martin Short is Lumiere.
All right. Great casting.
Yeah. I thought so. Like I said before, like I spent more time, like not so much in the plays and stuff like that, but definitely in music. I did my Spotify Wrapped, and it was like 86,000 minutes of music was listened to this year.
That's a lot of minutes of music.
I think I did the math, and it's something close to like 2 months of music.
Wow. Okay. That's fabulous. All right. Well, great. I think, yeah. So what are some standouts for you for music of the year then?
I realized this year, thinking about kind of what I listened to, a lot of it was either like really like heavy metal, or it was just like some good punk records. So like a Wilhelm Scream stood out. They had an album called Lose Your Delusion. The Flatliners had New Ruin, which is really good. There's a band called The Chats that put out this really good like 80s style kind of like punk hardcore record. It sounds like old Black Flag. It's called Get Fucked, which I thought was a great album title.
Yeah.
And then from the metal side, Ken Mode has an album called Null, and there's a band called Chat Pile, which I'll talk about later, has an album called God's Country, which is really cool.
All right, cool. I listened to, as usual, a lot of Between the Buried and Me. So
yeah,
their most recent album, Colors 2, that came out, I listened to quite a bit. I got weirdly back on a Misery Signals streak, so
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. I recently listened to the whole discography and then a little bit of repeat on the more recent last couple albums. They're the original singer back now.
Yeah.
So Ultraviolet is their most recent.
That's a great listen.
Yeah. That one was really good. Every Time I Die, Radical, that album, fantastic. Love it a ton.
Yeah. I ended up seeing a lot of live music this year. So that was cool to kind of return to that. Like I saw, I got to go to Welcome to Rockville, which is like not my scene.
Yeah.
But it was really like, cause it's a bunch of like, kind of like, I call them man rock bands.
Okay.
So it's like bands that think they're hard rock, but are like, they've never heard like heavy metal ever.
Oh,
and
sure.
so, it's bands like Five Finger Death Punch, which is like,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah.
But I got to see Smashing Pumpkins, and I got to see Nine Inch Nails at that, which was really cool.
That's really cool.
I recently saw AFI.
Okay.
They were really great. I got to see Pup, which was really good. So like there were a lot of I got to go to a lot, because I made a promise to myself that, once everything kind of like started opening back up, and I was going to start going to more live shows and seeing them, because I don't want to miss bands again. And so
yeah, I
spent a lot of time doing that. I think I saw Less Than Jake like 3 times this year.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been great.
Glad you have somebody that are so close to you as well.
Yeah, it's like right down the road. I can just go to Orlando and see a bunch of. I'm going to see City of Caterpillar like next month.
Cool.
Which is going to be cool. I also got to see Amon Amarth, which is a Viking war metal band.
Oh yeah, you mentioned them before.
And they are ridiculous. Yeah, they played in the drummer was in a Viking helmet, and they played with Cattle Decapitation, Obituary, and Carcass, which Carcass never tours the United States. So it was really cool to see them, and just straight up like just heavy metal. Like that's all that was. It's like the most metal. It's literally the most metal show I've ever been to.
Yeah. That sounds awesome. Sounds like it'd be a lot of fun to see that as well.
Yeah.
Another one I was remembering is Norma Jean put out a new album this year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's called Death Rattle Sing for Me, and it's very heavy. So
it's a return. Yeah, it's a return to form.
Very much so. Yeah. Very much a return to form. So if you were longing for the old days of Norma Jean style, this might be the album for you.
Yeah. For sure.
If you're into them at all. A lot of people are not.
I've always liked them. I thought they were great.
Yeah.
Drug Church put out a record this year, too, that was really good called Hygiene.
Yeah. I think you recommended that.
That's like my number 2 record of the year, I think.
Okay. I just started recently getting into a band called Everything Everything. I haven't listened to them much, but they have a relatively recent-ish album that came out called Raw Data Feel. Mostly I was listening to some of their older ones, one specifically called Arc. But that was something that I sort of discovered this year.
Nice. There's so much good stuff out there.
Yeah. And
you only have so much, audio real estate. So it's hard to like make time for it. But when you find stuff, it's like, oh yeah, no, this is good.
Yeah. I don't know. We could probably talk about these things forever. This is, in my mind, it's always fun to talk about my favorite movies and TV shows and music and all that. So
yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, so that's, I think just wanted to celebrate, where things have gone the last 5 years. We're so grateful we get to do this show and do all the silly stuff. But yeah, I think that's what we got for this.
Yeah, I mean, there's no take-home points for this one. I think, the big thing is just we're real thankful for everybody who's participated, who's made this work. For those of you who are listening, for those of you who are sharing, this is very much so a labor of love. We always kind of talk about the ads and we talk about the patrons and stuff like that. And those are really helpful for kind of setting up other projects. But at the end of the day, this is really a lot of people volunteering their time to make this work and to get this information out. And so just a huge thank you to everybody who supports the show and continues to support and share and participate. It's been really meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. Could not agree more. Thank you so much. Thank you for 5 years. Looking forward to another 5.
Absolutely. I love it.
All right. Well, even though we kind of just did a bunch of recommendations, let's do some specific recommendations.
Recommendations.
So the recommendation, I mentioned this band in the music section, but there's a band called Chat Pile, which I thought was kind of an interesting name. And they have an album called God's Country, which is really cool. So if you're interested in kind of noise metal, if you like stuff that is, maybe very Melvins influenced, very Jesus Lizard influenced, it's got some black metal elements to it too. It's really, really cool. This is one of the more unique records I've listened to in the year, and I have really, really loved it. It's a nice change of pace for some of the stuff I've been listening to.
Fun. All right. Chat Pile.
Yeah. God's Country.
I'm going to recommend a movie that I just saw recently. It's been out for a while. It's almost 10 years old at this point, but I just saw it, and so I'm going to recommend it. I'll warn that this does not have a super high rating on Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb. So this is a horror comedy called Hell Baby. You got Rob Corddry, Leslie Bibb, Keegan-Michael Key, Thomas Lennon of Reno 911 fame.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah. It's very silly, very bonkers movie. But if you're into horror comedies and you're into movies that don't take themselves very seriously, I think you could do worse than Hell Baby. You want to check that one out.
What a great name for a movie,
right?
I love it.
Very funny. Well, as I said, thank you so much for everyone who's listened. Thank you for being with us through this and all the fun stuff that we get to do. If you would like to support us, you can, of course, leave a rating and review. You can tell a friend, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. You can pick up some merch. We've got all kinds of cool stuff in our merch store that you can grab to round out your collection of podcast merch that I'm sure you have. You can also join us on Patreon, where you get access to all kinds of bonus content. You get behind-the-scenes content, episode notes, early releases, all that sort of stuff. And you can join for as little as $1 or as much as you want to spend, I guess. Not going to put a cap on that.
Yeah, I mean, spend as much as you, or just share, just tell people about us and whatever it is. But every bit of support is super helpful.
Yep. We've already sort of acknowledged our team and Patreon supporters that are currently already doing their thing. And so just a reminder, thank you to all those people. Thank you, of course, for recording with me today, Shane.
Of course.
And then I think that's all that I have. Am I missing anything?
No, I think that's it. I think it's time for you to go get some rest.
All right. This is Abraham.
This is Shane.
We're out.
See ya.
You've been listening to Why We Do What We Do. You can learn more about this and other episodes by going to www.wwdpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and we hope you have an awesome day.